materials people would say it's the equipment, and the equipment people would say it's the materials. And I kind of lost my temper with that guy, and I said, I can't learn anything if you just take care of everything.
Put an employee of the month sign in the driveway at your house, and then maybe park out on the road.
I wasn't actually trying to make the shift. The market was shifting me. That guy was a bit of a racist, but so we walked away from a $30,000 placement. So he literally stole the car.
Maybe that's why my sophomore year is as hard as it was.
Yeah, that could be.
Actually.
Sorry.
Hello, and welcome to Packaging Speaks, where we talk with packaging professionals about their career development and their perspective on the industry. For our first episode, we felt it made sense to go back to the beginning, so we're very excited to bring Wally Pop, formerly known as Walt, back from retirement to tell us about his experience in the packaging industry. Hey, Wally Pop.
Hi, Christian.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great. Sorry to pull you away from another Saturday.
Yeah, that's okay.
To join us.
That's okay.
Awesome. Well, I know you were not totally sure this was and it's going to be easy for you to do, but I'm really glad you decided to spend some time sitting down talking about your experience in the packaging industry.
Happy to do it.
Awesome. How's your day going?
My day is going pretty good. The sun was up this morning. Life is good on the lake. You know, it's not bad.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then I guess maybe we'll just jump right into it.
Okay.
Talk to me, Dad. I remember, I got a lot of memories from childhood, but I do not remember your entry into the packaging industry. Can you talk to us about it?
Sure. I'm guessing the reason you can't remember it is because you weren't born. But yeah. Well, to start, I went to Berklee College of Music and majored in the guitar.
Good start.
That's a good start to get into packaging. And then I went off to Texas to be an entertainer with my sister, and that didn't really work out. So my folks had retired up in Wisconsin. So I, not knowing what to do with my life, I went up to Wisconsin and got a job with Manpower, and Manpower got me a job mowing lawns for a company called the Hasten Company, which some of your people might be familiar with. But they make vertical form fill seal packaging machinery, horizontal wrappers, high-speed paper products packaging, blow molding, injection molding, that sort of thing.
Right. And you started there as a lawnmower?
As a lawnmower in 1979. And
okay.
And the vice president of manufacturing there, who was responsible, among other things, for the lawn, he I guess liked the way I took snow fences down and mowed the lawn and things like that, and asked me if I'd like to work in the factory. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I'm happy to go into the factory. And I took a job as a parts expediter. What that means is I would just advance parts that were important. I would figure out the parts that were important and advance them through the process. You know, at the time we were making our own parts right there at the company. So an interesting thing about that is, one of the things that I learned pretty quickly was they assigned somebody to me to be a mentor and teach me the ropes and teach me how to do this stuff. So early on, I went up to him and I was trying to figure out how to do something. I went up to him and I said, how do I get this accomplished? And he says, just give it to me. I'll take care of it. And I kind of lost my temper with that guy. And I said, I can't learn anything if you just take care of everything. So it was about that point that I decided I'm just going to take things into my own hand, my future into my own hands, and not necessarily rely on other people to do what they're supposed to do, I suppose.
Sure.
So with that, I was expediting parts for the parts department at Hasten. So I used that experience to move into the parts department and became a parts analyst. And that was my first experience in dealing with customers, dealing with the clients, because they would call, ask for parts, ask for advice, and those kinds of things, and I would have to figure out the complications for them and what part they needed and that sort of thing.
uh,
Um,
without it seems like without any real qualification to do so. Is that?
well,
I mean,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was on the job learning. The whole process was on the job learning and kind of
yeah,
figuring out the direction I wanted to go. Um, One experience that I think I related to you earlier was, and this really helped me with my development and how to deal with customers. But one called us; he had received a wrong part, because it was complicated, they sent it over to me, and I said, okay, well, describe the part to me. And I pulled out his files and I pulled out drawings and I had them on my desk. And we were on the phone for an hour or so trying to figure out the exact part that he needed. And I think I figured it out. And I said, okay, I'll send it out to you today and you'll have it tomorrow. And so I did that. And a couple of days later, we get a phone call. The guy didn't know my name. I was on with the purchasing department or something. He didn't know my name, but I get another phone call from them a couple of days later. And he said, we were having a devil of a time finding this damn part, and you guys sent us the wrong part again. Can you help me out here? And I got the part number, and I said, well, let me just go out into the parts room and find out, if there's something wrong there. So I went into the parts room, and they were just labeled wrong or something, or in the wrong bin or something like that. So I went back on the phone, back to the guy, called him up, and I said, "Yeah, I figured it out. We're just labeled. Somebody put them in the wrong bin. We'll get the right part out to you right away." And he said, and he kind of lost his cool, and he said, I spent an hour on the phone with one of your engineers a couple of days ago, trying to, and he didn't help me out at all." And he said, and I said, "Well, okay, I'll pass that on." I never did divulge to him that I was the engineer
no.
that he was talking about. So
And did you pass the feedback up the chain?
I did not. I think this is the first time I've related that story. Actually, it was one of those
Okay.
ones where I think I'll just stick that in my memory banks and learn from it. What I did learn
Yeah.
from that is frequently there's an easy solution, whether it be telling the truth sometimes or whatever. It's just an easy solution to what seem to be complicated problems frequently.
Okay. We're not gonna take the "telling the truth sometimes" quote and turn that into a business slogan. I don't think.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. So anyway,
Um,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. So you're working in parts at Hayson, and I feel like we're still a ways away from being a recruiter. What happened next?
Well, we got a little bit to go. I mean, you don't go from parts department into. I had to,
Yeah.
recruiters all become from sales, or most of them do. I'm pretty sure. And so my next move was to get into the sales department, and I got into inside sales as a sales coordinator, dealing with the sales outside field salespeople, and taking care of their internal needs. They would call us, and I would move things through, and I would write up quotes for them, and I would do those kinds of things. And I got to tell you, once I got there and I started dealing with these outside salespeople, I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to be one of those guys out there
Hmm.
on the road, talking to clients, doing all that stuff. So I started, you know, making sure my management knew that that was a direction I wanted to go, was to be into field
Right.
sales. So, and I had some good mentors and some good believers. Hayson was a great company, and when I did get a shot for the Midwest sales territory for Hayson for flexible packaging, and I, I didn't get the job. I interviewed with the field sales manager, and he went to my boss and said, I like Walt, but he just doesn't have the sales experience, and I really want somebody with that sales experience.
Yeah.
So they hired somebody with sales experience, and it ends up that guy was a bit of a racist, and he had no filter. He his racism as we got to know him a little better, like a week later, was pretty obvious, and he would say completely inappropriate things in front of customers, and
You
yeah, and the
can't have that.
no, and so my you know the field sales manager and my boss decided. My boss at the time was a general sales manager, but they decided, yeah, we can't have this guy representing the Hasten Company. So they went down to our office was in Des Plaines, Illinois, and they went down to terminate with him down there. And they said, I forget the guy's name, but they said, we're terminating with you today, and you need to clean out the car, and call your wife and all that stuff. And so he said okay, and he went out, and Fred and Don were sitting there talking, and he didn't come back for a long time, and they went out of there, and the car was gone.
Fred and Don were the bosses, right?
Yeah, Fred and Don
Yep.
were the bosses, and they went out, and he was gone with the car. So he literally stole the car, and and so
So,
they,
oh,
yeah. So Fred and Don were like, okay, how do we handle this? So what they
yeah.
elected to do was they called his wife and they said, I'm so sorry, but we just terminated with your husband, and he stole our car. And we're not going to call the police if you think you can handle this. And she said, I'll take care of it. And so somehow that whole thing resolved itself. And so Fred said to Don, you want to reconsider hiring that guy with no sales experience? I don't think you could embarrass us any more than this guy just did. So
Welcome to packaging sales.
yeah, welcome to packaging. So I got into field sales, and it was everything that I
That's
thought it would
hilarious.
be. Yeah, it was everything that I thought it would be, and I just thoroughly enjoyed selling packaging machinery. Um, and
But now we're getting to the part of your career that I can remember.
yeah,
I remember you traveling a lot
yeah, I was traveling
and
a lot.
and being on the road. And I remember meeting Don Gable, right? I met him a couple of times.
Well,
If
yeah,
anybody's
you
been
did. And
around the industry for 30
we
years,
actually
that
bought
might
his
be a
bought
bunch
a house
of
when he
times.
got out when he left Hasten. We bought his house. We lived
Yeah,
there for
I
20
remember that.
years.
And he took
Yep.
our dog or something
And he
like that.
took our dog. That's exactly right.
I mean,
So we were
he's
very good
legendary.
friends. Don was a wonderful mentor. So was Fred. I mean, they all were. Hazen is just a wonderful company. I really enjoyed working there, um, and was sorry that I left. To be honest with you, I left because they moved to South Carolina, or they were moving to South Carolina because I was in management. I found out before most people, and I actually had a meeting with you guys. You may not remember that, but
Oh, I remember it very clearly.
yeah, it's like, what are the chances of you guys wanting to, moving to South Carolina? And the general consensus was zero,
Yeah.
uh, zero
I mean,
chance,
I was like a eighth grader or a freshman or something like that.
something like that. Yeah, it
And
was.
Amanda was in grade school, and we had friends and lives, and everybody was like, "No, man, you can
Yeah,
go, but
we aren't
no."
going to do this. We aren't going to do this,
Yeah,
which was a little alien to me because I was an army brat. I traveled all my life, but regardless, I completely understood that, and so I looked for another job, and and in retrospect, for what people that are listening to this, if they get hit with the same thing, if you have bosses or a company that you really like and you're faced with this kind of a decision, it would be worthwhile for you to go back to your boss and say, listen, I'm not going to move to South Carolina. Is there something that can be worked out here? I really kind of wish I did that, but I didn't. And uh, and so I left the Hasten company, and took a job with as a vice
I
president of
mean, as a
sales.
salesperson, they may have let you. You may have been able to stay out and run like the Midwest Territory or something, right? I mean, it's
Well,
not
by then I was a general sales manager, so I
okay.
was,
Yeah,
I had got a couple of promotions from being a sales representative. I was a general sales manager, and I guess my thought was they probably wanted me to move to South Carolina to maintain that level. But in reality, to what you just said, I probably could have ended up being the general sales manager anyway and not moved. We probably could have figured something out, but again, we didn't.
yeah.
Um, so anyway, I took a job with Sassa Packaging, Sassa Packaging North America. It was an Italian company. They bought a company called the Paxall Group, which I don't think exists anymore. But and I basically was the sales vice president of sales for the Paxall Group. Um, it gave me the title of vice president. It was an interesting job. Um, I would probably qualify it as a mistake in my career. Uh,
Okay.
and I saw things early on. I was with him for about 3 years, and I saw things. To be honest with you, I hate to say this out loud, but I just when I went interviewing with my first interview with him, I sat in the waiting room and I looked at the ceiling, and some of the ceiling tiles should have been replaced, and you know they just didn't even maintain the building. So I mean, I
Yeah.
I probably at that point said, there's just some red flags here. I shouldn't take this job, but I did, and that lasted
Well, it
about.
also checked a lot of boxes, right? I mean, we didn't want to relocate. You needed something you could get to that was still in packaging and could maintain the lifestyle your family had become accustomed to. There were a lot of factors in there.
There were a lot of factors, and I mean, it met all my professional and familial needs, but it's still I was still even going into it, I was uncertain about what I was doing,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's the good side is I never would have gotten into recruiting like I did after
Right. And you got it. I mean, you got the job at SASAB with what was his name from Packaging Personnel Company?
Dick Taylor.
Dick Taylor.
Dick
That's right.
Taylor is he brought me into that company, and 3 years later, the writing was on the wall. I didn't really want to stay there, and I don't think they wanted me either. Um, so I was not. I was being obvious about it. I was looking to do something,
Yeah.
and I met with Dick, and I said, "Have you ever thought of expanding packaging personnel company?" And he said, "Yeah, we could expand it into the end user side. Which, when I say end user, I'm qualifying that as like a General Mills or you
Conagra,
know,
Pepsi,
yeah,
Jim Beam.
the people that we sold machinery to when I was
Yeah.
at and because Dick's whole genre um, was to move people within the packaging machinery world, from Hasten to another packaging machinery company. So
Right.
that he saw that there was a market to recruit for packaging professionals for the end users. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I said, okay, maybe I can help you with that. I wasn't going to be an employee of his. He didn't want employees, but I was so I kind of had to set up my own business and work as a subcontractor, I guess.
Like a 1099.
Yeah, yeah, with him. So that's when I established the name of PackStaff. Made it an LLC, and I established PackStaff, and I worked with Dick. At the
So we're in
time,
1998 right now.
that was in 1998, and at the
Amanda's late
time,
middle school. I'm middle of high school.
yeah,
And we were living on Beach Court, and you just moved back home, basically.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I'll tell you that's a transition because I was traveling 80-90%, and then to
Yeah, it was
come
a
home.
transition for everybody, as I recall.
Yeah, but to go from being gone all the time to being home all the time,
Yeah.
it was a bit of a change. So, anyways, I kind of not renovated, but
Maybe that's why my sophomore year is as hard as it was,
yeah, that could be.
actually.
Sorry.
I'm thinking about that and the run ins we had. It's like, yeah, that was right. I mean, there was a lot of transition going on, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a lot of transition going on, and just getting into it, as it's a commission world.
Yeah.
Money's always on the top of your head in that world. So anyway,
Right.
that's what I did.
When I started it, I had already known what it was because you had owned it for a long time. When I came into the business, you'd already owned it for a long time. And I mean, it was just me and Kate. We were thinking about, we weren't even married yet. So, I mean, the pressure on me starting at PackStaff was drastically different than you with two kids and I don't know how many years of an upper middle class income behind you already. Like there there was a lot of pressure,
Yes.
and moving really without a net for the first time in your life. That must have been a lot. Well, not for the
Yeah.
first time in your life, but for the first time since having a family anyway, without
Yeah.
a net. That
It was
was
pretty
that was,
scary. It was pretty
yeah,
scary. But Diane and my wife Diane, we were up to the task and say, well, let's do this, and what's the worst that could happen, kind of a thing. And it's sales. No matter how you look at it, it's sales. And I just tell you, I'm a pretty good salesman. And so I felt comfortable in that,
hmm
in the skill set that I had to accomplish the goal. Um, so I did that. And interestingly enough, when I did that, the plan was for me to expand into the machinery side, is to take, because um, Dick's expertise was packaging machinery, but not on the end user. It was selling, to salespeople and selling. I mean, placing salespeople and engineers in the packaging machinery world.
right,
And he wanted to get packaging machinery people for companies, because that seemed like an area where companies always had openings for good, strong packaging machinery people. And so that's initially what I did, was try and find packaging machinery people for the General Mills of the world, and companies like that. And it's more than just General Mills. I mean, we had a lot of companies, but that's just one that pops to my head.
yeah,
So anyway, the interesting thing there was that it evolved. We would get calls for packaging materials developers, and I had a little bit of resistance initially, but it got easier and easier to make that shift. I wasn't actually trying to make the shift. The market was shifting me. The market was
yeah,
changing me, and I always kept machinery people back there, but over time, packaging materials, packaging development people um, started to, overtook the machinery side. And to the point where you might get some calls every once in a while now, but not very many, I'm sure. I mean, it's,
almost never,
yeah,
almost never. And those people are still hard to find, for the record.
yeah, yeah,
I do think there's probably still a market there, and maybe that's some place we could dabble in the future. But this package development space is changing rapidly and very dynamic, and I mean, I don't see a change in the demand for talented packaging development people. I think this will be, at least I see it, this will be PackStaff's wheelhouse for the foreseeable future.
yeah. And you don't always need to develop outside of that either. If you do,
Right.
I wouldn't spend the time doing it. I'd hire somebody else and say, try and find business in that market.
Yeah.
But uh,
So you
I'm
started
glad that,
PackStaff.
yeah, and I'm glad it shifted the way it did. I enjoy the packaging materials world. Uh, despite when I was selling packaging machinery, we always got into this battle with packaging materials people, saying is that if there's something wrong with the equipment, the materials people would say it's the equipment, and the equipment people would say it's the materials. So now
Yeah.
it's always the equipment for me. So anyway,
Okay.
um, what I did recognize as time went on is that, if you're going to go into that niche, if you're going to into the packaging world, you really have to go full bore, and you have to be part of the community. They've got to, you got to get to a point where they recognize that this is a packaging person. There's a lot of recruiters out there that are generalists that just,
Yes.
oh, there's a job. I'll find that person for you. We're good at that. And my personal philosophy, and it was a philosophy I kept throughout my recruiting career, is to build that trust. I think I told you a story earlier, but one of the telling phone calls that I had early in my career was I talked to somebody to recruit him, and he was very snippy, to be polite, and I said, I have this opportunity. He says, well, I'm not looking, and he said, and I wouldn't go to a recruiter anyway,
Yeah.
and was quite rude, but he clearly did not trust recruiters, and I ran across that a lot. People just don't. They they
Yeah.
they think recruiters are a particular kind of ilk, if you will, and I thought, we got to get past that. Pack staff needs to be a trusted part of the packaging community, not just a recruiting firm that goes after a quick buck and blah blah blah. So that was where my focus was. That's everything that I thought and I did. I kept that overarching goal in mind, to establish that trust and establish PackStaff as part of the packaging community. Um, I'll give you an example of how seriously we took that, and you were part of
Sure.
this this thing actually, but it was somebody that you had recruited. I don't remember her name and probably shouldn't use it anyway, but we had placed her at a company down in Texas. You
Oh,
did,
yeah.
and then through another source, uh, we had actually, she had an offer. I think it was accepted. I don't remember exactly,
Yeah, it was.
but then a friend of ours in the recruiting world said, I just need to make you aware of this resume. And it was an earlier resume that this person had submitted to them, and it was completely different
Right.
than the one that
It
we had
wasn't just tailored to a job, it was completely
false.
different.
It was
Yeah.
completely different.
One of them was false.
This person went from having 10 jobs to having two, I mean, that
Right.
kind of thing, and it was,
Yep.
so I looked at that thing for a while and I was like, you know, we have this information. What we can just kind of stuff it in a drawer and take the $30,000 commission or whatever it was, and nobody will be the wiser, or we can focus on this long-term thing that I had in my mind of trust. And when people deal with PackStaff, they know that they're dealing with a trusted company. So what we opted to do, obviously, was is to say, we went back to the company and we said, you need to see this. We just got this in our laps, and you need to do with it whatever you want to do with it. But here you go. And we did, and we sent it to the person too. And we
Yeah.
said, can you explain this difference before we sent it to the company? And she said something like, the bigger question is, why are you digging up my old resumes? And I think, well, that's not really the bigger question, but
Right. It might be the bigger question for you, but it's not for us or these or this
yeah.
employer.
So, so we presented that to the company, and oddly enough, my recollection is that the company probably would have hired her anyway, but she backed out of the process. But
Yeah, I don't remember that well, but
yeah,
I do remember losing out on the commission.
yeah, but so we walked away from a $30,000 placement, and I don't know if we ended up filling it or not, but um, those are difficult things, Those are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, especially early on. When you're. I mean, I was trying to build a client list,
right,
and was placements weren't happening on the regular.
right.
And sometimes you've got this feeling of desperation, and you're really, man, we kind of need to make this placement. Do I really need to say that out loud? But the answer is always yes.
Yeah, but the other side to that is, are you in it for the long haul? Or are you in it for just to
Right.
make that quick placement? And I've always fallen on the side of, we're pack staff. They've got to trust us. We need to be trusted out there, and we will walk away from a placement if it impugns our integrity.
Yeah. And we have not changed that philosophy since you left. I think it's a cornerstone of who we are, and definitely, well, we try to see it as something that sets us apart, but definitely something it's important to maintain, because I still, I mean, I don't think the cloud, the stigma of recruiters is really going away. I still get people that will hang up on you right when as soon as they find out who you are, or say things like, "Oh, I don't need no stinking recruiter. If I'm going to get a job, I can find that on my own," and that kind of stuff. And it's like, "Oh, well, I'm not trying to bother you. I just have this job that I think might be good. Do you have 5 minutes to talk about it? You can say no." So um, yeah,
You know, this is. Let me
you
interrupt
made
you
some
because
good points.
this is a something that I think people should hear is, I can that statement. I can find a job if I need a job. I can find a job on my own. But what you're also doing is you're not always looking for a job. These guys are not always looking for a job. But what might happen is a vice president job or something or some job might come up that
Right.
you're not looking for, that if you get a call from a recruiter, because that's what we do. We look at jobs, we and this could be the opportunity that you want, and I would caution people to not be dismissive of recruiters, and recruiters will help you out a lot. I can't tell you how many times I've helped people out with negotiations. And
Right.
um, uh, I got a phone call one time from again, I won't use his name, but he ended up being a friend of mine. And that he had called, he was working for M&M Mars at the time. And he said, you know what? Uh, he says, I want to be in management. What can you do for me? And I said, are you, put all that aside, are you happy at Mars? He said, yeah, I am. And I said, well, the best thing for you to do is to stay there and become a manager, work your internal sources and become a manager. Don't come
Right.
to me looking for a management job. I mean, I'd be happy to place you someplace, but your chances of getting good management, solid management experience, and working with mentors that will help you become a good manager are right there at that company.
Yeah.
Because and so you stay there, then come to me when you're a manager, and I'll see if I can get you some other kind of a job.
Get you
But
something as a director, or right.
yeah, yeah, but for from a career development standpoint, the company that you're with is going to take a risk on you taking you a manager because they know you. But
Right.
I wouldn't hire somebody with no management experience and take a risk on them because I don't know them. I just wouldn't do that if I were in another company hiring a manager, for what it's worth.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I agree with that too. Let's see. So you became pack staff. You learned some lessons about integrity and how important it is to stay in the packaging niche, depending on who you are and how you pronounce that. My recollections of working for you were some of the bigger moments we had. Obviously, we tried working in the same office for a little while, thinking that some collaboration might help. And ultimately, what happened was we worked in the same room. We just ignored each other closer together, I think.
Yeah, basically.
Let's see. So, Pack Staff, you started in '98. You ran it by yourself for a while. How many employees have you had at Pack Staff over your run here?
They're all my family members.
Yeah.
And I think that uh, Robin's still with you, right?
Yep. Part time.
Yeah, well, I had Robin early in 2001. I remember because of the 9/11. But Robin worked for PackStaff. You've worked for PackStaff. My sister very briefly worked for PackStaff.
Yeah.
My brother threatened to work for PackStaff. Um, um,
Threatened to work. That's how people in the Ellis family deal with each other, right?
yeah,
As your brother threatened to work at PackStaff, you put an employee of the month sign in the driveway at your house, and then maybe park out on the road,
yeah, we kept you in
things like
line.
that. It's been a fun run working for the family business.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, but it's all been family that's worked for PackStaff.
Yeah,
There are times when I think that the business could have absorbed another recruiter easily that I brought in from outside, but as it ends up, I had a pretty good supply of people just under my roof.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and thanks for the business, man. It was a good run doing it with you, obviously. And Amanda and we are trying to take a lot of the lessons you gave us in integrity and honesty and being packaging specific, and parlay that into some new things. Obviously, we're spending here time talking to you, and we've recorded a few other episodes of what I think is going to be a well received podcast in the industry. Talked to some pretty good professionals, well known names out there. We are obviously continuing to grow our network and trying to find ways to break down some barriers. A lot of people I've been talking to in the industry these days are saying one of the biggest problems is, um, you know, sustainability efforts are often siloed, not only by company but even inside a company. Maybe there's a sustainability group, and then there's a continuous improvement group, and then there's somebody else, and there's just not a lot of there's not enough communication happening industry wide to help solve some of the longer circular economy, sustainability oriented type stuff that a lot of the packaging communities being tasked with solving.
Yeah. Another
Um,
thing that I would counsel you and Amanda on, just to always keep in the back of your mind, is that your strength is the packaging materials community, is the packaging engineers that you have in your database,
right.
and that's what you always have to nurture and take care of and talk to people and grow and all of that stuff. That's the strength that you bring to the table. Companies, I don't mean to discount companies. I mean, they pay the bills, but companies will come and go, the clients
Yeah.
come and go, and personnel, I mean, human resources people come and go, and that's a much more but the packaging world is there, and that's your bread and butter, and you got to do everything you do should be geared towards taking care of that.
There's no doubt that without our network, PackStaff's value is zero, right?
That's right.
That's the only thing we bring to the table is our network.
That's right.
And yeah, we are working hard to nurture that and to find new ways. One of the limiting things I feel like that one of the limits we've been trying to overcome, is really the only value we've been creating is either for our client company or for engineers we're placing. Right. Occasionally somebody will call and ask us for help, and we'll help them through a negotiation or whatever. But really, we're only creating value for, let's call it, 20 to 25 packaging engineers a year. Where at the same time we're having thousands of conversations, and how can we create more benefit for those folks?
Hmm.
And so we're looking at ways to start offering career advice, to help folks to help folks approach their career with a more strategic vision. If you want to end up managing a group someday, how can how can you map that out so that's actually where you end up, and you don't get sidetracked and end up in a packaging lab someplace. Uh, I really think that there are more ways to connect with the industry than recruiting. And you make an excellent point. The network is everything, and we're actively right now working on ways to create and bring new value to the people we're already connected to. So
Well, and I think that that's important. I think that, I mean, you that's important. I mean, you guys can through your connections, you can be a resource for packaging engineers, and advertise or whatever. Those are the things I'm sure you're thinking about. And but I
yeah,
agree with you that there's ways to become a valuable commodity to the packaging engineering family.
I hope so. I hope so. I think that you have created a lot of value over the years. We continually talk to people that say, "Oh, how's Walt doing? Oh, he retired. Oh, when did he retire? What's he doing?" And pretty much I tell them he's probably sitting on his deck looking at Lake Michigan playing the guitar.
More
Um,
often than not, you'd be right.
right. What else? How is retirement? You want to talk about that? Are you loving it?
Yeah, I am for the most part. I mean, there's times when I think about having something else to do, but then stuff pops up and I'm busy, and I'm reconnecting with my guitar. I mean, I've always stayed close to my guitar, but it's more now than I play my guitar a lot. And
You golfing?
I What's that?
Are you golfing?
In the summer, yeah, I'm enjoying the golf league, and yeah, I'm enjoying the freedom that retirement brings. There's times when I kind of wish I had some regular thing, but then I shake out of it.
Good.
Retirement's good.
Anything else you feel like, given your perch, given your perspective and a cumulative 40 some years of experience, anything else rattling around between your ears that you feel like the rest of the world should know?
Not really, not really.
Okay,
I think, I
great.
mean,
Well, then, in that case, thank you very much, not only for giving us an hour, 45 minutes of your retirement to do this podcast, but for spending the time that you did to grow this business, for the reputation that you cultivated over these decades. It is, of course, uh, providing a living for your kids and grandkids now. But it's a good legacy, man. So
good.
the way people are talking about you in the world is still in a very positive light, and we appreciate everything you've done for us. So thanks again
Thank you.
for joining us. Packaging community, again, this is Packaging Speaks. I'm Christian Ellis, managing partner at PackStaff. I think you can expect to see episodes of Packaging Speaks coming out on a bi-weekly basis. We've already recorded a few more episodes with proven packaging professionals, packaging engineers, various industries throughout the country. So I look forward to bringing those stories to you and getting to know everybody out there a little bit more. Again, Christian Ellis from PackStaff, thanks very much for your time. We'll see you on the phones and at the trade shows.